technologies and innovations on the market. I'd like to take the opportunities of these brief introduction speeches to talk about how Panasonic approaches innovation. Innovation has constantly been at the forefront in the company, and we usually spend up to 5% of our global turnover in R&D. Panasonic Corporation owns approximately 100,000 patents worldwide, so I guess it says a lot. I guess you will all agree that the external pressures shaping business today have never been greater or more varied. The changes that already started have been drastically accelerated, bringing a host of new challenges for us. We are currently facing massive disruption in our businesses, initially triggered by a whole range of emerging trends and technologies, and now accelerated by the COVID-19 situation. Technology trends like IP transition and remote production are now boosted by social distancing, and companies required to adapt quickly. Faced with this rapidly shifting landscape, all organizations explore ways to adapt. From our side at Panasonic, we can say that more than ever, innovation in technology continues to rewrite the possibilities for business. Manufacturers such as us need to reinvent themselves on many levels as well. Ultimately, it means providing to you, our customers, new technologies and innovations that will help with your operations. Over its 100-year history of manufacturing and operating a global enterprise, Panasonic has accumulated a wealth of knowledge about how to innovate. That's why today, I would like to introduce you to a very Japanese concept and philosophy that Panasonic has been using. It's called Gemba, and this process is being used to radically review, redesign and reinvent operations using technology to increase efficiencies and free up creative potential. Gemba combines an in-depth understanding of the organization and the latest available technologies to deliver new methods of working and ultimately bring new and creative solutions for our customers. So this is what we are going to do, I guess, for the next years to come. Innovating and bringing to the market new technologies and solutions to help customers overcome specific problems or adapt quicker to new constraints. Taking the opportunity of this Leaders Briefing series, I will show you some of our latest innovations. Panasonic is permanently enhancing the usability of its products and making integration easier and providing cost efficiencies for our customers. So SLP includes PTZ, system cameras, tracking systems, IP platforms, and so on. And we'll be starting today by showing some of our new PTZ cameras, and we will also cover such topics as 8K array system and IP processing platforms during the next webinars of this series. Panasonic's 10 years PTZ anniversary marks a journey in technology, which has since remained at the forefront of innovation. The journey began 20 years ago with the introduction of the traditional box camera and pan-tilt remote head solution. The progression to an all-in-one PTZ was the obvious direction to improve the functionalities, and for the past 10 years, we have been busy developing the best possible compact PTZ. As of today, Panasonic still holds the #1 position in the European PTZ camera market when it comes to broadcast and live events. Today, the success of our PTZs has been found in the latest flagship additions to our lineup, which consistently brought innovation, like the UE150, which was the first compact PTZ capable of 4K 50 and 60p, in addition of supporting 12G SDI and HLG and BT2020 for HDR. It also was the first PTZ camera compatible with the 3D protocol for augmented and virtual reality. This feature is free of charge and contributed greatly to make AR and VR affordable and accessible for many customers. We also just released a brand new UE100 4K PTZ camera, which can be operated remotely with flexible operation and easy integration. It includes 4K 50 and 60p capability, a newly designed direct drive motor system for more precise pan and tilt movements, and a variety of interfaces, including 12G SDI and IP. From the workflow standpoint, the UE100 supports high bandwidth NDI, as well as NDI-HX, and most importantly, SRT, which is currently in high demand on the market. Usually when streaming video over IP from a sporting venue, for example, the local area networks tends to be quite congested. So to use the SRT allows you to capture a high quality encrypted video stream over a public network instead, and to ensure jitter and packet loss protection. So this is a perfect option for remote production, and it's now available in our new PTZ cameras, another first on the market. So this wraps up my presentation for today. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you tomorrow for the next episode.
Thanks very much, Guillaume. Very interesting. Again, I look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. I'd like to introduce our panel now, if that's okay. You'll see them appearing on your screen periodically over the next few seconds as we get used to the buttons on Zoom. Our panel today is really quite a stellar lineup, if I don't say so myself. Narinder Ball from BBC Sport. She's an outside broadcast engineering manager. Natalie Cornforth, who works for DAZN as the head of global virtual production operations. Henk van Meerkerk from Fox Sports in the Netherlands. He's head of production. Kevin McHugh, Sky Sports Director of Technical Operations, and Alessandro Raitano, who is not only Sky Germany's Director of Sports Production, but he's also SVG Europe's Chairman of the Advisory Board. Welcome to you all. Thank you very much for joining us. If you want to know more about the speakers, I've just put a link into the chat box. You can see their bios in there. But Heather's going to kick things off with the first question. Over to you, Heather.
Thank you, Will. Hello, everybody. So first of all, obviously, we should all be at IBC right now, but we're not. Or actually, we should all be flying home from IBC right now. I want to know what kind of technologies have caught your eye this autumn, because a lot of companies have made releases and used our technology showcase in the last week to highlight what they've put out there and enhanced and updated. So let's start with Narinder. What have you seen and why? How is this technology going to be of use to you?
But hi everyone. First of all, I've got to say that it's not really necessarily new technologies, but just as you say, some of the enhancements that people have made. I think Agito has really come into its own with social distancing in cricket. You know, that's been a major player, but it's a lot of the enhancements that have allowed us to continue broadcasting via remote productions and using those remote models. One of the things I have seen that's been particularly interesting is a camera that uses, it's a really high resolution camera, and they use sort of a fisheye lens at various different angles, and these can all be knitted together to give a 360 view, which I think could be really interesting, especially at a time where, you know, we're hoping crowds can be let back in, and that's going to be sometime in the future. But once crowds are let back into the stadium, it really helps to work on those VR aspects of being sat in a stadium seat, you know, maybe your season ticket holder seat, and looking around at the crowds around you.
Cool, thanks. That sounds really good. And who's next? Who else wants to tell us about what they've seen? Natalie.
I think the key for us right now is really to be able to do more with less. So some of the tools that have attracted my attention are really looking at those automated workflows. So for instance, the Smart Live tool with the integrated graphics has really stood out. So it enables us to do a lot more, and also it integrates with editing platforms and also social media platforms to basically be able to get our content out to our customers quickly without too much hardware on site.
Cool, succinct, like that. And Henk.
Yeah, hello everybody. It's nice having me here. I'm really glad to be on the panel again. We've been working on our new studios, and so I stick with the hardware. At the moment we are using new Sony Vanish cameras in our studio, cinematic cameras. And we are waiting actually on the new zoom lens from Canon. That's a longer lens than we have right now. So it's the new 25-250 cinema servo lens, and we're gonna use that in our studios as well. And for us, it's a brand new studio with new equipment, and it's great to work with the really new stuff again.
Yeah, your whole cinematic approach to sports, like it. And
Yep.
Alessandro.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me also. I mean, I would answer the question more generic, to be honest. I mean, that there was nothing which, let's say, okay, this is the brand, let's say, caught my eye. It was more or less, and this is something we realized, I mean, due to the pandemic, I mean, the existing investment, it was good to see that this enabled us to do more. And it was good that we already invested in some, let's say, best-in-class manufacturers to see, okay, there is anyway up and running, but we don't use it, and now we're forced to use it. Let's say, I would say the kind of the service abstraction going from, let's say, more into software, less hardware. It was up and running, ready, but never, let's say in the past, we were always okay, on-prem is much safer, better. Let's say we got enforced, we have this comfort zone. I mean, this was more like something what I was realized that anyway, we are up to, I mean, state of the art, up to date, there's nothing crazy, but now we get forced to use it. And this was something what I realized during this, well, let's say the whole crazy pandemic, I mean, it's still going on, that we are moving really, really towards software-driven workflows. And this is something generic, but let's say not specific by, let's say, pointing to a manufacturer. I see this as a general a movement, which is now forcing and pushing very, very extensively to the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And last but not least, Kevin, let's hear from you.
Hi, thanks, Heather. Hello, everyone. I think for me, again, following Alessandro's thoughts there, it's been very much less about manufacturers and more about concepts. You know, for me, the biggest game changer that we've seen through the pandemic, and maybe just kind of look back on that, has been NDI. Because actually, when we're all stuck at home and we're all trying to build out facilities in the cloud, there's this technology that's kind of been overlooked for so long, sitting there just waiting to work. And you know, the amount of content we actually built out of just putting things together in very basic kind of cloud environments, using NDI to knit it all together, and then subsequently using SRT as well as a transport. I just think that without those two bits of tech, and without a lot of the vendors really starting to kind of stretch their imagination, especially like vendors like MediaLux or vMix or Simply Live, these kind of vendors that are really kind of stepping up to moving video around the cloud. It's for that's been the most interesting, important thing for me over the last kind of 6 months, really.
It's interesting you should say that, because that leads nicely into the question I was going to ask next, which is very handy. I'm going to stick with you, Kevin, if you don't mind. Those things you mentioned there rely almost entirely on one really crucial ingredient, which is connectivity. Mm-hmm. It's going to sound like a really dumb question, but how big an issue has connectivity been since lockdown, and what sort of challenges has it created as far as sports production or sports broadcasting is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You've got both ends of the spectrum that both have their own strengths and weaknesses, right? But if we go back to kind of the start of the lockdown and everyone kind of scurried off home, kind of generally left where they were working and focused on what they were going to do, from, you know, sitting at their kitchen tables for the most part, sitting in their small kind of home offices. Broadband's been the first and kind of most difficult thing, I think, for a lot of us, you know, and really, I mean, it sounds really simple, but the kind of the biggest increase we got in people working from home effectively was to send out 100-meter Ethernet cables, right, and ask people to kind of lash it into their router to their home office. Because for the most part, you know, when we went into lockdown and as we started to kind of crawl out of lockdown and started to look at how we were going to make content again, we were very, very focused on the fact that we wanted people to work from home. We wanted them to use their home broadband. We were going to build facilities in the cloud. We were going to do as much as we could to keep people at home, get everyone involved, have everyone working on productions. And really, for me, you know, a lot of the telco providers have definitely raised some challenges. So a lot have stepped up, but have certainly raised some challenges. I mean, the other end of the scale is the big connectivity that we've relied on as well. So, you know, our friends at NEP Connect and BT Media and Broadcast, when sport returned and we're asking all of these companies to work together and allow us to really start to do remote production at scale from Osterley, you know, these providers really stepped up, really kind of helped us out, really got us in a position where we could kind of do the level of remote that we needed to on secure networks. So it's kind of been a blessing and a curse at the same time, really. But I think, yeah, I mean, to sum it up, just get a long cable, right? Because that seems to have solved most of our issues.
It's definitely solved my issues. I can tell you, when you've got kids playing Fortnite, Wi-Fi is no good to you.
No.
Natalie, your role involves virtualization and virtualized production. So presumably the connectivity options available to you are absolutely crucial to your operations being successful.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we rolled a lot of our work into remote, particularly commentary was a big one for us. So what we ended up having to do is, you know, putting in really strict rules around the minimum connectivity that we would expect commentators to have in their own homes, and we set up you know, a stringent sort of setup and testing procedure so we could make sure that at different points in the week they were showing the same amount of connectivity. So it really allows us to be as comfortable as we could be, that they had the connectivity that we were required to do commentary. And obviously, yeah, you know, cables is always an important one.
Lots of cables. I mean, it's ironic that it's ironic that Alessandro is going to get this next question, because I know that the Wi-Fi in his office is dreadful. So, how has Sky Germany dealt with the connectivity issue? Not very well in your office, as we know.
Not very well in my office, unfortunately, but let's say overall very well, because I mean, here we have a good service provider, let's say, will give us the necessary bandwidth. But I would, let's say, this my view on that is a little bit, I mean, it's different. During lockdown, where we had only sports, live sport paused, and we have live sports up and running, the necessity was different. And obviously, yes, satellite is sometimes then also key. And the iPhone is also helping, let's say, for a 4G or 5G is helping to produce content. And by the way, what we realized, and this is, I think, overall, I mean, the audience is accepting that, because what they need is the message, and what they need is the information and the content, and how you generate it and contribute and distribute it. They don't care as long as you have it on there. So this is the portion of the live news part. But if it comes then where, let's say, the restart of our tier 1 product, obviously connectivity is key. There you need the bandwidth, and as long as you can protect this area in a way that you also, let's say, either you produce remote or, let's say, on-site. I mean, this was the switching point then to saying, okay, tier one is back. Now we have focus on that. But nevertheless, what we learned is, and this is something from a content contribution side, especially on tier 2, tier 3 news part, it is also the momentum, the new way of working, and people are generating the content in a different way. And as long as you can secure that in a even satellite, 4G, whatever, I think that this was the core message what we gave out also the producers and the editorial team within Sky.
Great. And speaking of editorial, you know, Natalie, you know, how have you guys evolved your broadcasting technically to create engaging content over the last 6 months?
So we actually already had our virtual production platform in place before COVID hit. So we already had the tools to be able to edit and add commentary from anywhere. So actually allowed our teams to carry on working and still access the talent that they wanted to wherever they were. But obviously when there was no live sport, we had to be able to rework the offering that we were giving to the customer. So we were able to use remote vision mixing tools and with integrated graphics, which then allowed us to reimagine archive. And therefore we could have in-vision analysis of an event with a pundit and also with a sports star that was actually there at the event to discuss what it felt like to be there, any of the discussions or background information that was going on at the time. So it was really engaging for the customer to be able to hear that different side of it. We were also able to add new graphics and integrate more data to really enhance the output that we were able to produce. We were also able to do things like have in-vision esports. So we had footballers who were supposed to be playing on the field at the weekend, but actually had them playing online instead. So it's like a different spin on the game and on football itself. But to reiterating what was said earlier, I think the restrictions really actually accelerated production's use of these tools and really increased the confidence that they had in them and kind of proved themselves and showed the scope of what they were actually capable of doing. So now I can see, you know, this is going to be what's happening going forward, and you know, we're not going to be rolling back to what was happening before. This is the way forward.
Cool. And I'd like to go to Henk next, because we spoke recently about what you guys are doing with robots and drones and all that kind of thing. And you've done a lot with your studio.
Yeah, well, I first like to respond to the topic before this, and because what I think the good thing about the whole lockdown is that we've been starting using applications like Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, whatever, and even our talents, who normally are very afraid of using these kind of applications, are now really happy to use these. Well, their telephone, they're making videos. And it really helps us to create more content in a different way. It's not the broadcast quality as we said, but it's great. I think it's a big advantage of the whole lockdown. Although it's, well, of course, we want to be in the stadium, we want to have crowds everywhere, but I think it makes life as easier for when we open right now. And that's what happened in the Netherlands. We had a big problem because our government, they shut down football in March, and they said we're not going to open it before the 1st of September. So we're a subscription-based channel. So, well, all the ratings dropped down, of course. People, well, get rid of their subscription. And we were a bit, well, what are we going to do right now? So what we did, we basically closed all our studio shows. And we did a deep dive in our archive. And that's another good thing I think about the whole Corona, is that now we have really great content built from our archive, all built by our own editors. And it helps us, even now we are starting again, it still helps us to fill up the gaps with really good content from the past. So I think there are a lot of negative feelings about Corona, but I think there are some positive effects as well.
Definitely. And maybe we could go to Kevin next, because we spoke recently about what you're doing technically to enhance sound at matches. There's a lot going on there. So how's that helped increase and engage, create engaging content for your viewers?
Yeah, I mean, and specifically around Sky Sports crowds, I think that's we've talked about this at length, but it's an interesting concept, the idea that when football would return, initially it would return silent, or you would just hear kind of like the noise from the players on the pitch. And I think certainly Sky Sports crowds and the way that Sky Sports crowds evolved from the initial restart of football has been massive for our viewers, actually, because we did give the viewers freedom of choice. You could have gone to one of the two channels and chose to have it or not have it, and for the most part, the kind of majority of our customers were for it rather than against it. And I think that as that evolved, and certainly as I'm a football fan myself, but I wouldn't say that I'm an avid football fan. And watching something without it just, and I've said this a few times, it just felt a bit miserable to me. It kind of just completely reminded you that there was this whole problem going on, and you couldn't use kind of TV, or you couldn't use sport as an escapism away from that. And I think by enhancing something and creating something that felt normal, it's different, but creating something that felt normal was really important. So as to allow kind of the viewers to kind of escape from all of this for a little bit. So yeah, I mean, for us it was really good. For us it was really interesting to see how, again, taking something from nothing and building it up kind of enhanced our output. And yeah, that was the kind of number of other things we're doing around watch alongs and various other things that we were making, I think gave us a quite well-rounded offering.
Thanks very much, Kevin. I'm going to jump in there. We've talked about fake audio. We've talked about connectivity. We've talked about studios with film cameras in them. Narinder, what other technical challenges have you faced over the last few months, and how have you overcome them?
Well, one of the biggest challenges for the corporation as a whole was just having the whole of its workforce overnight have to work from home. Luckily, we had a project to move everyone across to Zscaler anyway, but that was fast-tracked. But one of the main things, we were quite lucky, I think, as a lot of other broadcasters have been doing, we'd already been looking at remote productions from a sustainability point of view anyway. So we'd already done some proofs of concept along those lines. So we had things that we were ready to roll with anyway, but some of the key things for us was just fast tracking projects that we had that were already on the roadmap. So more cloud-based workflows, as have already been mentioned, using things like vMix, things that we were planning to do where you just take IP and keep IP right the way through the production chain, rather than going back to baseband and then going back to IP for delivery onto the web. So all of those projects have just been pushed to the forefront, really. But I think one of the main challenges, like everyone else has said, was really that connectivity side of things. As we move more into remote production, there's various models of remote production that all rely quite heavily on connectivity, and it's getting that connectivity out of the stadium, whether it be the old-fashioned video signals, or actually, as more and more people are looking, just a data pipe that allows you to do whatever you want with that data.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely a lot of money to be made if you happen to work in telecoms at the moment. Henk, what other challenges have you faced in recent times that we haven't mentioned yet, perhaps?
Well, as said, we've been rebuilding our complete studio. So only the desks are still the same. Every screw has been out, and so even the decor, everything is moved and changed. So we've been facing a big challenge this summer. And what we did, we've been looking at our studios for a couple of years. Of course, we want to be HDR proof because that's coming someday. It's not there at the moment for us, and we hoped that it was already. We could have already been doing it this year, but Corona stopped it, to be honest. And but we're still looking. So we looked at our studios and said, well, how do we want to look? How we want to have a good look and feel, and want to be different than the other stations in the Netherlands. And so we've been looking at all kinds of cameras. That's the first one. We did a lot of tests this winter, and in the end, we ended up with the Sony Venice cinema camera. And we're using Canon cinema zoom lenses, servo zoom lenses. And the big problem was that normally there are a lot of wires coming from cinema cameras. And NEP, I think NEP in Australia, they already made a kind of a box that you can lock on the back of the camera. So now we only have two wires coming out of the camera, and we can set up a viewfinder. We can have remote control zoom. So basically the cameraman can operate the camera like he's used to, like a normal studio camera, but the picture really looks amazing. It has been a big challenge to get it all done. But in the end, it's running for, I think, already 4 weeks, something like that. And we had a big shows this weekend, and even the crowds, they like it. So it's a mission succeeded in that case.
Beautiful. It sounds beautiful. Anybody else on the panel have any challenges they haven't mentioned yet they want to discuss before we take a short break for a case study? Natalie, Alessandra, anything else you faced over the last 6 months? We're going to come to future challenges after the case study. Was there anything you've had to go? No, Rinda, go on, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say another one of the challenges we had was all of a sudden we were trying to facilitate things that would have been at OBs back either in the office or doing them remotely. So right at the beginning, there was a lot, we had to do a lot of back-end work to our edit systems so that editors could log in and edit from home whilst working with producers who were viewing the edit as it was happening live. And now it's sort of building out facilities back at base to be able to accommodate all of the productions that are now remoting back in.
Thank you very much indeed. We're just going to take a short break for a little case study now. So our panel is going to leave us just momentarily. We're very lucky to have Telstra Broadcast Services with us today. Ricardo Rodriguez, who's the head of business development for the Americas for Telstra. Ricardo, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Excellent. So I'm going to share my screen. I speak with PowerPoint, so bear with me. It's just going to be 3 or 4 slides. So So hello, everyone. Welcome to this, as I said, quick 10-minute presentation. My name is Ricardo Rodrigues, and I lead business development in the Americas for Telstra Broadcast Services. I'm based in San Francisco. It's 8:30 a.m. here. I had my coffee, so I'm good to go. And this year is a special year for us. Telstra Broadcast Services celebrates 5 years of existence. So today I will be sharing with you some highlights of our history and global innovation in sports production. So keeping up with the innovation theme that we saw before on the panel. But first, I would just like to spend a minute or two to give you a quick overview of our assets and capabilities. So Telstra, as I'm sure you know, is one of the largest telecommunications and technology companies in the world, with headquarters in Australia, and owns and operates a global infrastructure of over 2,500,000 miles of subsea fiber cables and satellite teleports. This infrastructure is the foundation for our Australian and international internet backbones, or autonomous systems, AS 1221 and AS 4637, respectively. In 2015, through the acquisition of Globecast Australia and bringing together internal broadcast media experts, Telstra Broadcast Services was born. So we leverage Telstra's infrastructure and assets to build media networks and apply agile processes that meet the typical broadcast industry requirements. Of course, being an Australian company, we have well-established media networks in Australia, supporting all broadcasters and venues. And for the international market, we created Telstra's Global Media Network, or GMN, as we call it, which is a video contribution and distribution platform supporting permanent and occasional use service on a consumption-based business model. GMN is monitored 24/7 by our Broadcast Operations Center in Sydney, and is supported by several master control rooms throughout the globe. This platform also offers point-to-point and point-to-multipoint connectivity across Telstra on fiber, satellite, and internet networks, plus partnership networks. So with our network partners, we reach over 2,500,000 global on-net endpoints for about 1,000 customer sites and over 1,500 venues and stadiums. GMN growth on average is 10 to 12 new customer sites a year, and I would say 1 to 2 new cores per year. And for example, this year we just announced, I think last week, the expansion of our network to India and mainland China. So moving on, in our short history of just 5 years, by building credibility in the market, we have secured some transformative deals and wins, and this slide shows some examples. In 2017, we built a permanent remote production network in Australia, which now delivers all Tier 1 sports nationwide. And in that same year, knowing that we had the network strength to deliver content over vast distances on our global network, we also started delivering international remote production. Also in 2017, we secured a deal with DAZN and WTA Media for the Women's Tennis Association Series. And in this case, Telstra supports over 2,600 hours of live WTA coverage from more than 52 events per year. Moving to 2018, during the Commonwealth Games, we worked with the esports team, the Chiefs, to demonstrate technical capabilities of 5G at Telstra's 5G Innovation Center on the Gold Coast through ultra-low latency of just around 5 to 6 milliseconds. This highlighted, of course, the benefit of low latency and extra bandwidth, which is absolutely critical in our industry, as we all know, and maybe even more so in esports. And the following year, in 2019, we started our work with Rugby World Cup, with Telstra providing international content transmission services for IGBS, and connecting AMG Media Hub in Stockley Park in the UK and onwards for international distribution to rights holding broadcasters. And also in 2019, we worked with ITN and World Athletics to deliver an international remote production solution for the Yokohama World Relay Championships. Telstra's high-performance media IP network transported 30 HD live camera signals from the Nissan Stadium in Yokohama to Tokyo, and then onwards to the NEP Andrews Hub in Sydney. And this year, we were very happy to be a critical part of the solution which helped bring sports back after the COVID lockdown, together with our partners, RNS Consulting and PSSI. And so I'm referring to the UFC Fight Island, which uses a massive solution of 4 systems to provide redundant satellite paths, and covering all UFC's licensed partners in Europe and the Pacific Rim. And to maintain diverse pathways, signals are downlinked at SES Israel, NEP Connect UK, and Telstra Australia for fiber optic transport to the US via our Telstra Global Media Network, or GMN. This is a lot, but luckily I have just one more slide, which is about our forward-thinking strategy and how we see the next 5 years of innovation. So these are just some examples of key trends and topics we see happening in the near future. First, my personal favorite, esports. We have been broadcasting esports since 2015 and have seen this genre grow and accelerate during the pandemic. Telstra Broadcast Services recognized traction of esports early on and looked to overcome the challenges in areas like connectivity and broadcasting for a digital-first industry. This is a space that, of course, it's growing and also driving change in the overall broadcast industry. So it's very exciting. Next, we have internet delivery. We have been working with Zixi for many years, but this year we made it official. We became official partners. And by partnering with Zixi, we added internet delivery capability onto the Telstra Global Media Network to support hybrid delivery models for permanent and occasional use services, and connecting on-net rights owners to off-net media buyers on a global basis. This new integrated service expands our GMN to broadcasters in locations where fiber or satellite is not available. Then we have, cloud and virtualization. This was addressed in the panel before. We have seen, a significant acceleration to cloud workflows during the pandemic, and we expect a trend towards cloud platforms and virtualization to continue. With Telstra's international internet backbone, I mentioned before, AS4637, we have been able to help our cloud, security, gaming, and CDN customers to scale quickly and securely. And we have also been able to support the direct consumer trends in media and sports broadcast with IP transit and internet delivery services. Remote production is another growth area, which probably doesn't come as a surprise to any of you. We have been providing international remote production solutions for a few years already, and we will continue leveraging Telstra's international network to deliver international remote production on a global basis. There was an increase, of course, in interest and activity during the pandemic, as remote production minimizes travel requirements for production crews, among other advantages. This is also an area that has been pioneered by esports, which continues to innovate both technically and operationally in productions over long distances. Then we have remote workflows. Telstra has supported remote workflows during the pandemic, such as remote working, remote collaboration, and remote education. leveraging connectivity and cloud services to enable our customers and partners to meet remote workflow requirements. And finally, another hot keyword, 5G. As a telco, I wouldn't be able to do a presentation without talking about 5G. But in this particular case, I would like to focus on network slicing solutions. So 5G network slicing allows a network provider such as Telstra to create specific broadcast grade networks for customers with the guaranteed latency, bandwidth, and quality required for live broadcast without competing against other network use. So slices can be turned on and off when needed, so they aren't permanently consuming bandwidth on the network. And broadcasters can soon be offered, slices as a service, which can be booked on a per hour or per minute basis, the same way fiber and satellite network resources currently are. This technology will definitely make wireless contribution a viable and stronger option for live sports. So that's it for me. Hopefully I kept it under 10 minutes. Hope you found this informative. These are my contact details. Feel free to reach out if you want to learn more about our broadcast services and portfolio, or just want to have a chat about broadcasting, sports, or even esports. Have a great morning if you are on this part of the world, or evening if you are in Europe, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Can I ask panelists to magically reappear? There we go. Everyone's back. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great. Okay, so my first question now on the second half is to Alessandro. Starting with Alessandro. How are you going to keep your armchair fans hooked on sports? Over the next few months, because everyone's worked really hard to make things work during lockdown. Now sport is coming back, but we're still having limits on how many people can assemble, and still not allowed people back in stadiums, etc. Do you need more personalization or interaction? And this also mixes in with a question posted on the chat by Martin Roos, who said, are there any new ideas re AR, VR, or MR to integrate that into broadcast to help audiences interact?
Yeah, in the meantime, I have to change my workplace, as you can see, due to connectivity. Unfortunately, I love it. I love it. No, very simple. I mean, we started, and by the way, what we are doing now is what we started during lockdown, let's say, because I think the biggest challenge was during the period to restart, to coming along with a wow effect. And what we introduced was watch along, fan zone, where we, let's say, zoom in, where we bring people and fans in and subscribers, and let's say dedicated subscribers only in the studio to give them a kind of a VIP feeling. But on top of it, we also, let's say, had the crowd noise, which we introduced, very successful. And also that this is everything, VR and AR, everything what we, let's say, will again for the new season. There's nothing crazy new, to be honest, because, and this is something what I, let's say, this is latest news what I get from the government at the moment, is that they have a testing scenario where they're now bringing people back into the stadium. And to be honest, we have to react very agile and according to the situation, what comes next, because we have a federal system here that could be that we have 500 people in Berlin and 10,000 people in Munich. So how do you adjust your program in that? So I would, let's say, keep it very flat and in a very high quality by saying what we introduced already during restart. And we're working out and bringing some, let's say, maybe some new twisting by, let's say, the fan engagement part, by watch along feeds and giving the people possibility to react on social. But it still means at the end of the day, our people watching our product by 3 and 4 million people on the Saturday by their live match. And this is the most and utmost thing what we have to keep and secure, that we put, let's say, every energy what we're doing, we put in, let's say, on this, our bread and butter business. But next to them, obviously, yes, we have to react. How many people are now in the stadiums, and what can we do? Because this will be change everything, by the way. Are we in the studio? Are we going on site? How are the security measurements then? And this is something we're working on, but there's nothing crazy new on Friday, to be honest. we not had it already.
Thanks, Alessandro. Natalie, what would you like to add?
I just wanted to add, like, I think from an OTT platform point of view, fans interacting with content is a really interesting prospect for us. So particularly around catch-up material. So for future, we'd be really looking at integrating some of these tools that we're using in our production offices actually onto the platform itself. So being able to have sort of AI powered or data powered automated tools integrated into the platform, which would allow viewers to then view the content that they want to view. So they can just pick moments that they want to see. They can just see the goals. They can focus on particular players that they want to see, and things like that. So it actually really allows them to have the content that they want to see catered exactly for what their requirements are, based on what they want to see, who they're fans of, and their interests, really. So I think that's going to be a big one moving forward for us.
Yeah.
I forgot one thing, but it's now obviously we are introducing now HDR. I mean that's anyway that's crazy, but let's say this is from a picture quality point of view. Is this the next step of what we do, and this is in a live context, and so this is something I don't want to forget, because I'll embarrass my colleagues. They're working hard on that. So HDR it is from Friday on.
Yeah, there is something new on Friday.
Yeah. That's something new on Friday.
Cool. And who else would like to answer that? Particularly, if you've got anything going on AR or VR or anything like that.
Well, I can mention something about it. I think it's for us as a subscription-based broadcaster, really relying on live football, especially Dutch football. I think it's our main goal is to keep up with the quality of the production we had, because the problems right now in the stadiums are sometimes quite big. So that's still our main goal, is that the people watching our programs don't feel like it's Corona. Although, of course, there are less people in the stadium, but the coverage in itself should be from a high quality. And you know, normally we have a camera between the benches who also does the coaching, making shots of the coach and also the audio of the coach. And we're not allowed to be there anymore. So what we did, we took the Agito, like Narinder said. I think that you use it for cricket. Well, we use it in our football matches. And it turned out to be a great help. It's great between the benches. Even the coaches like it, the players like it, and it also can move very fast with a very steady, stabilized shot along the pitch. And it, to be honest, was the first time we used it, and we were all our directors. They were really happy about it. So that's probably something that's gonna stay. And we're going to use more than we did before.
Great.
I'm going to jump in now. We've talked a lot about challenges that we've solved. What I'd like to move the conversation on to now is challenges that we haven't yet solved. I'd like to give each of you a chance to answer this question, because I think it's quite important for industry to appraise where we are with things, but also I'm sure some of our audience will be very interested to know where they might be able to help you. So Kevin, we haven't spoke to you for a while. I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. What other technology or workflow or production problems do you currently have and still need to solve as we go forward into I hate calling this phrase, but the new normal of sports broadcasting?
Yeah, I think for us, and again, kind of leaning into, there's two things that I kind of want to talk about, and opposite ends of the scale, really. So from a cloud production perspective, I think the biggest challenge that we run into and we continue to run into is having viable audio products that work in the cloud. So there's a lot of kind of video products that kind of have a little audio add-on, and you very quickly hit the end stop of those products. And I think for us, the biggest challenge we've had is around really a kind of a really clever comm system, a really clever audio mixing system, something that's going to work inside the cloud. It's that, Unity did a great thing of having a good product that everyone jumped on, but it's Mac based. And when we start to think about deploying that in the cloud, it's just like, it's very, very frustrating, right? So I think from a vendor perspective, the thing that I would encourage is really a sensible a sensible solution that's not just Reaper of working in the cloud and giving you that kind of comms piece and giving you that really kind of granular audio piece. I think the other end of the scale for us is really around the work the challenges we have around social distancing, right? And it's one of the big challenges for us over the next 6 months is really about where we put people. Because we have a gallery that's designed around everyone being kind of crowded into each other and working alongside each other. And as we returned sport, we had to kind of blow that whole model to pieces, and to the point where we've moved all of our graphics operators to another building, and we've had to kind of connect that into our galleries, and we've moved other people to other parts of the business and really kind of split the whole operation up. And I think as we go into what is pretty uncharted waters, and it could go up, it could go down, it's certainly not going to go back to normal. It's really about kind of re-establishing the way that people work and re-establishing the way that we build facilities to make sure that we don't end up in this position again where we're trying to scratch our heads and work out how people are going to actually work with each other safely.
It's really interesting, unless you want to double your footprint of your operations. Narinder, sure. Same question to you. I mean, what haven't you solved yet? What challenges are you still facing?
Well, I keep going back to the same point. It's connectivity. So whilst football has great connectivity at the stadiums in the UK, there are a lot of other sports that we covered that don't necessarily have that connectivity. So a lot of the velodromes won't necessarily have the sort of connectivity that you require to do remote production now. And that is a major point for us. And it could be any kind of connectivity, but it's not necessarily got to be fiber connectivity, but we've seen how broadband can be used, how bonded cellular is being used now, but those are all aspects. And whilst we are looking at remote production, we still want the resilience there. So that's another thing that we're coming up against with connectivity, is just having the ability to have that resilient model there. As Kevin's mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, it's a space thing where you're going back into base that was designed with galleries that worked in a specific way, and all of a sudden you're having to change that, you're having to separate people out. One of the biggest things when you've got the presenters on site and you're all sat in a gallery in Salford as we are, is you've still got that delayed program spill going back on talkback. So if someone could create a little magic box that sorted that one around the latency that you have with connectivity, that would be amazing. The audio teams do a great job of working around it, but that's still a factor, and I think that will be for a while.
Thank you very much. Just before we move on to the guys, just to both of you, actually, you both mentioned Kevin and Narinder. There's a question from a friend of the show, Kevin Fitzgerald, who's asking whether any of these temporary installs that took place at speed during lockdown, I guess, are going to stay around. So can they be scalable and repeatable for the future? Or do you think there'll be more permanent solutions taking their place?
So I'll jump in on that one. So from our perspective, we obviously, when we returned football, we didn't want to kind of go back to our original model around the Premier League. So we actually hosted a lot of this and built a lot of temporary facility in the broadcast centre in Osterley. And what that allowed us to do really was to kind of control people's working environments, which was good because we wanted to keep people safe. And it also allowed us to do kind of remote production at scale. So when we came to do the amount of events that we needed to do on the return, we could do that within the facility. So what that's done is really accelerated a lot of our plans that we had around remote. So where we might have had a kind of 3-year plan around remote production, we're now we're in the midst of a massive project to rebuild galleries, rebuild facilities, add connectivity, add capacity, so that we can take our major tier of rights, which is kind of our Premier League football, our EFL, F1 is obviously already remoted, and then host that out of our broadcast centre. So whilst having the ability to scale will be around with us, and having this kind of this flexible facility will be with us, and I think we've learned a lot from that. I think what we are doing now is really pushing hard to have a much bigger, much more capable facility at Osterley, so we can actually just stay in remote now forever.
And that's fair enough. Narendra, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I was just going to say we've had the ability to scale for a certain amount. We've done remote working with things like the Winter Olympics and Commonwealth Games for years now. So we've had the ability to scale up and scale down with peaks and troughs. This blew that out of the water. You know, we couldn't scale up to this extent with what we had. And a lot of it is temporary, and a lot of the ways we're working, we're having to find new ways around as new sports come back. So as rugby league comes back, as rugby union comes back, but very much like Kevin said, we'd already been looking at remote working from a sustainability point of view, and that aspect we will be driving forward. We already had the plans in place; they've just been moved up by a few years, and you know, that's something that we'll continue to look at, and that will be something that will stay beyond COVID and beyond this pandemic.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Natalie, I'd like to bring you in if I don't mind. What problems are you still needing to solve?
I think for us, you know, like, as you know, people have said, connectivity is always going to be a big issue. But I think for us, because of what we do, we produce, you know, huge amounts of content for a global market. So we'll have, you know, multiple versions of the same event with multiple languages that we need to provide for the customer, but also that we want to create content from. So I think a big one for us is finding solutions that have that global reach, so that we can, you know, cover the whole globe, but still provide the stability and reliability that we need, but are also cost effective. And you know, looking at things like dealing with multi-track audio, so that we can have we can use the resources that we have efficiently, but still being able to provide that content for local markets as they're required. And then once we're delivering content regularly in MTA, then being able to cut that content, create highlights, create additional content for people to view, and be able to do that sort of on a global reach with one sort of solution is a big thing that we would like to be able to do.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Henk, what's keeping you awake at night?
Well, Corona, to be honest, because we did a big investment in our studios, and so we have a lot of problems still to solve. But we did an investment to work for another 5 years. So we basically we doing a lot of remote production right now, and that's all part of the plan already before Corona. So to be honest, hopefully someone will, it's an off topic, but someone will find a fast test for Corona. That will help us a lot, because then we can do the work we used to do. The players can be on the pitch the way they were, but it will take some time, I guess.
I'm not sure any of our sponsors are going to be able to help you with that, Henk, sadly, but it's a lovely idea. Alessandro, do you still have challenges to solve? If so,
no, always. I mean, at the end of the day, but I'm looking forward to, I mean, it's kind of, let's say, more opportunities, because what I definitely want to do is, let's say, catch up with Kev and leveraging, let's say, at the end of the day, what we can do as within the group, because this is a lot of, let's say, anyway, potential. And let's say, to be honest, I mean, the UK colleagues are on the forefront in regards of virtualization. And let's say we want to jump on board with the German unit and do not extra work there. And let's say we have to focus a little bit more on, and that will not why we speak always about technology, but let's say the people behind. And this is something, the new of working required a definitely mind change of the people in a very, very dramatical way, in a very fast way. And let's say we have to keep it because it's there, it's not leaving. And that's why we have to work on exactly, okay, how we can create more content, what is let's say the new editor look like, editorial people look like. I mean, we're still facing or having a legacy which we have to sometimes fight for, but it's sometimes good. Something I think is changing. We have to think a little bit scaling the vertical group of targets, of people, of new audience, but therefore we need new workflows, and this is always people behind. And to ask, okay, if a manufacturer can help us, yes, offer us easy tool, which let's say immediately understandable for everyone, and then let's say we can talk. And this is something I want to work especially with group, how we can do that. And this is an opportunity from my point of view, which let's say forced in a very positive way, by the way, through to COVID, and now we have to execute it very well and make us let's say ready for the future then. But it's a people business, still a people business, and then we have to work with the people, and that's excellent. That's why we're working in this industry.
Yeah, and moving on from that, Alessandro, I mean, everyone here, the big thing is all about remote production. This is the crux of everything that everyone is talking about. Yeah. Is this the start of, obviously remote production has been on a fast forward because of lockdown. Is this just the start of what we're going to see from remote production? And if so, how do you see it evolving over the next 6 to 12 months?
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's one argument which Narinda always let them mention is the sustainability part. This is one way you can look at it. The other way is obviously, and we tend to say we are working in this business as managers, always the cost perspective you always have on the other side, and this is just something, the comparison you have to make. And to be honest, where remote operation is important and necessary, and where we can do it, we will already do it. We can extend it and say, okay, let's say Formula One is also a group thing where we totally 3 countries working remote, sharing, which is absolutely perfect. In our case, we're doing 300 matches of handball and now another 80 on top of it. So we're increasing it, but let's say there are certain areas where we are not investing into remote. Let's say German Bundesliga, because this is something which will be done from let's say a host broadcaster is in place, which is not Sky. And as long as they're not changing, we cannot force them. So that means at the end of the day, we stick to the on-prem thing, let's say, but we can, let's say, talk about the unilateral operation, which we do remote. So obviously remote is everywhere. And we have to, let's say, very precise where it makes sense to do it and not why we have to do it, and let's say push it through, because there's a cost component behind that. And this is something where we have always, let's say, balance it. But obviously in markets, and I'm not talking about the German market, because this is a really specific market where OB costs are really low, and now the initiative to start into remote is a different way than maybe in the UK, where Kev said, okay, this is something where we do in general, every Premier League match is remote, because there is 2 parts, sustainability and a cost saving part associated in, which makes totally sense. So I think it's specific from where the market we're talking about, but it is the future, no doubt about it. It is the future, and we will see a lot of progress there.
Cool, thanks, Alessandro. And Kevin, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I think to add to what Alessandro is saying there is that we've definitely been on our big tier remote production journey for a while now. Obviously we've done the F1 stuff, we've done the EFL, and now we've done the English Premier League. For me, I think around remote production is now to start to get into where it gets a lot more difficult, and that's where we start to just pick up on Narinda's point around when we start using the public internet to do remote production, because that's where you are flying by the seat of your pants a little bit, and that's where we are going to start to rely on some of our vendors and our suppliers to support that function. We've learned a lot around quite basic, really cloud-based production over the last 6 months, really. And for me, a huge focus will be that day where we start doing multi-camera production in the cloud across the public internet. Because once we get there, then actually from a sports coverage and a rights perspective, it just opens up everything for us, because we can really, really start to make some inroads on covering more events and adding a lot more a lot more creativity and a lot more production to those events that historically would have been maybe more of a kind of traditional outside broadcast.
Sure. And Narinda, would you like to comment on this one?
Well, I think Kevin and Alessandro have both covered it really well. I would just say, whilst I totally agree that remote production isn't a fit all, and it shouldn't be treated that way, and there are times when you absolutely will choose to go on site. For us, it hasn't necessarily proved to be the more cost efficient method either. At times, remote production has actually cost more, but it's something that we feel if you editorially you can remotely produce something and you've got the technical know-how to do it, then it's something that even if it does cost that little bit more, we would be willing to do. because we see the sustainability angle as being so important. But I totally take Alessandra's point that it isn't always the right solution as well.
Thank you.
It's interesting you should say that, Narinder, because somebody asked the question about price of remote production. I think you've answered it very nicely there, that it isn't always cheaper, but there are other benefits. But I think it's really important that you made that point. I'm going to stick with the theme of money. I'm going to start with Henk, if that's okay, Henk, this question. The pandemic has affected revenues, and when you are spending money, how's that impacted on the return on investment that you need if you're buying new technology or you're using new services? Do you now have to get a payback quicker on your services and technology?
No, not for us. We were lucky because, well, I said a couple of times, we did a big investment this summer, and we were lucky to sign the contracts in February, just before the whole lockdown of the Netherlands. So that helped us a lot. But the way we have rights is different comparing to other countries. What we have still a contract with the Dutch Premier League for 5 more years. We closed during Corona. We closed a deal with Ziggo. That's one of the biggest affiliates in the Netherlands. So, and what they did, they opened up Fox Sports 1, so our channel number 1, for free until the 1st of January. So we are now visible in around 7 million households in the Netherlands. So that's big numbers. These are not our ratings, but these are, so we're more visible than we used to be. And of course, our budgets are under pressure, but we still have, well, at least 5 more years to work with the studio equipment we have been invested right now. So for us, it's not a big issue, a real big issue to do a return of investments in a faster way, because we still have, we have time.
Thank you. Anybody else on the panel have an opinion on this one? Do you feel the need to pay back any investment quicker now? Natalie, go on.
I just think that the big factor for us is rather than return on investment, it's all about looking for flexibility and efficiency within tools that we have. So actually being able to contract or to just use the tools when we need them, or tools that we use regularly, and then having that capability to then be able to flex or to burst into additional resources as and when we use them. So therefore that gives us a much better cost model and being able to be much more efficient with the tools that we have. So that's kind of what we are looking for with new tools.
Value for money.
Yeah, exactly.
Go with that. Anybody else before I handle to the next question? Anybody else got a point of view on the spending cash? No? Heather, over to you.
Okay, and right, so this is kind of like one of the last questions for you. Where do you see the sports broadcasting market being in the next 6 to 12 months? Is it in danger because of, I don't know, revenues, or the lack of interactivity or whatever, and what can help it survive and maybe make up some of that revenue that both you guys are losing, but also the leagues and the clubs out there, they're losing from, ticket sales and things like that? Who wants to start with that one? Volunteers.
I can start. Yeah. In general, I do not see the industry in danger, because this is, I think, what I see is, obviously there is a different view on every P&L after this pandemic, and this forces us obviously to talk about the budget in a different way, not about the investment, let's say what you want to spend, but nevertheless, I see what's coming next in the next couple of, let's say, months period till end of the year, how many production do we have, how many leagues coming back and, let's say, replace all the, let's say, games which are not played during COVID and now, let's say, played again. There's an extra effort in the market which have to, let's say, a very good situation for all the freelancers, all the OBs, every manufacturer. They are still reinvesting cyclists for a lot of broadcasters which are building new entities in this market. So I do not see a crazy dangerous situation. I mean, we are working in an industry and not in the automotive industry. They have a really struggling, or not, let's say in the airline industry, they struggled during all the pandemic. We are working in something where normally you see the consumption is increasing. Yes, there was a pause in live sports, but they are coming back very strong. So I see it from a very optimistic way. Nevertheless, the P&L is demanding in every company, and this is something we have to tackle. But the outlook is not bad. This is my very personal view on it.
Thanks, Alessandro. And Henk?
Well, I'm a very positive person, so I don't think we're in danger. But still, there is, because we've been away, as said, for a very long period. So there has been big pressure on the Dutch clubs. Has been a big pressure on us. So as long as we keep on playing football, or having other sports, then there is no problem. We can do it the way they did in the US with NBA staying in a bubble. MLS was in a bubble. But as soon as the live coverages are gone, and we really had that, of course, then it can be a big thing. But as said, I'm positive, and hopefully they're looking in the Netherlands. They also look at, we have 30% of crowds in the stadiums already, and they probably are going to do a test in October to add a little bit more. Then you need to wear a face mask. Hopefully this will work, and hopefully all the numbers for the hospitals will stay down, because then we can fill up the stadiums and we get more revenues for the clubs. And if it goes well with the clubs, then I think the industry will be fine, because then it opens up for us a lot of possibilities, of course, again.
Great. Okay, would anyone else like to add anything to that one? No, lovely. Okay, over to you, Will.
Okay, so I am going to ask you a question, which I'm hoping quite a few people in the audience have always wanted to ask and have never had the cojones to do so. If somebody out there in sponsor land, vendors, manufacturers, suppliers, service providers, has an idea or a thing that they think might help you do your job better, solve one of your challenges, solve one of your problems, how are they best to contact you? How are they best to get those ideas to you? Alessandro, I'll start with you. What's the best way for somebody to come to you and give you a new idea that maybe you hadn't thought of previously?
Maybe reaching me by phone or by WhatsApp. No, but just kidding. I mean, let's say always the best thing is to approach it. I mean, this I said it many times before on the panels, a couple of times. I mean, the thing is, what I like is always, if a company is really, and we're not talking about a crazy due diligence, what they need to understand Sky Germany in specific, but I mean, if we are working in the sports industry as Sky, we have 20,000 hours of live sports. They know exactly what we're doing. So, and they know exactly the environment we're working in. So I want to be tackled really well by someone who's did some work behind, some homework to see, okay, this is something you're doing at the moment. I can help you to get there. So, and it is very simple. It is nothing crazy. And as long, and this is sometimes weird because manufacturers are not approaching us in that way, because they're approaching us in a very generic way. And I was always thinking, if I could have a good key account and understand about the business, what we are doing, I can exactly address what we need. So again, I'm reaching out to you everywhere. Come along with a little bit of background, what we're doing, what we need, where we started, you know exactly what we're doing, and how can your product help us to get and be better. So this is the only thing I'm saying. I like this way of product pitching instead of having a generic discussion. Remote fits everything. This is something, to be honest, this is not helpful. I mean, and this is the way I can address my request into the market.
Thank you very much indeed. Kevin, do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I think we're all missing the big trade shows, right? Because it's often at the big trade shows where you find the smallest vendor that's got the coolest idea. And I think, yeah, we've certainly missed two. We may miss another one. So, you know, to pick up on Alessandro's point, I don't want to hear from a vendor that has half an idea and then wants us to then develop the other side of it for them, because more often than not, it's like, oh, right, how's this going to work then? You know, you've got something that's not fully rounded. We're going to spend a load of time working on it with you, and then you're going to try and sell it back to us. I want to see from our vendors, I want them to understand what we're doing. And I want them to understand, or at least have a view on the future, rather than asking us what we see the future to be. I'm keen for them to tell us what they see the future as, and to try and challenge some of our thought process on the way that we do things. And come, yeah, again, to Alessandra's point, come with half an idea. Show us something that works, and then we will imagine how we will make content on it alongside you. But more often than not, turning up with something that's not even there really as a product is quite frustrating. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you can get absolutely hammered on LinkedIn with vendors with lots of ideas, and more often than not, it takes a lot of time to kind of pick these things out. But I think trying to get these ideas into publications like yours and into environments like yours is a good place for us to see them, understand them, and allow us to kind of reach out.
Nice plug. Thank you, Kevin. Like that very much.
Go,
very kind.
Yeah,
Super. £10 in the post. Narinder, somebody's got an idea. How's the best way to get that idea to you? Not LinkedIn, clearly.
No. Well, I think Alessandro and Kevin have both said that it's really good to hear from people who've got a bit of an idea of what you do, and they can bring their products and how that would relate to what you do. We're always really keen to hear from people who think they might have something that would help us out. And, you know, sometimes it is good just to have that meeting, to sit down and for someone to say, you know, as Kevin's quite rightly said, to question how you do things and why you necessarily do something that way. You know, if you've got something that is going to be a more efficient way of doing something, then, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter that we've not done it that way in the past 10 years or so. But you've got to be able to demonstrate that at that meeting, and you've got to have something there that works, that can demonstrate that as well, rather than, as Kevin said, you know, an idea of what might work in the future, with some, you know, work on both sides to develop it and bring it on.
Thank you very much. That's very useful advice. Henk, how should people approach you, and what information do they need to have?
Yeah, well, I totally agree on the other speakers. I think personally, I like to receive an email. And I said, with an eye-catching subject, and I want just a small piece of a linear where it really catches me. And then, well, they can put a lot of stuff underneath that, but it should be done, because we all are, well, I got so many emails every day, and there's at LinkedIn so many posts, so I look at it sometimes, but that's it. So especially at the moment, as you all said, know what we are doing as Fox Sports, know what we like, and comparing to Kevin, we like really crazy out of the box stuff, and so we are really looking to crazy ideas, and even if they're not proven yet, we like to work with, well, youngsters, whatever, with crazy ideas to in the end to get it done. So that's our philosophy.
Love it. Crazy ideas, send them Henk's way. Natalie, last but not least, if somebody's got an idea they think might be able to help you, how should they make that?
I think the guys have said it all, really. I think, yeah, having an idea of what you're doing and really succinctly selling what their USP is and why their tool is right for you, succinctly, I think is a very key point.
Excellent. And that was a very succinct answer, which is handy because we've actually run out of time quite significantly. We're going to have to wrap it up then, I'm afraid, everybody. I've really enjoyed that. I found it very useful, very entertaining, very interesting, as I expected it would be, to be fair. Thank you to Panasonic, who are our title sponsor. Thank you also to Telstra Broadcast Services. If Ricardo can share his slides with me, I will share them with everybody. I know that we didn't quite see those slides today, unfortunately. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you, Kevin, Henk, Alessandra, Narinder, and Natalie. You've been great. Thank you to the SVG team who've helped, have all done put this together today. Hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow. We'll do this all over again, but with some different people, with some production companies, with some host broadcasters. When this stream ends, you'll be directed to a feedback form. If you give us some feedback, we might be able to work on things ahead of tomorrow, make it better still. It'll only take 2 minutes. If you can do that, I'll be most grateful. Other than that, thanks for your time. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Have a great evening. Cheers.
All right,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Fun.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.